I. During one performance, he played guitar with his own blood, passed out drunk behind the stage, and smashed up hotel rooms with Ozzy Osbourne, only to come back later and clean up like nothing happened. Zakk Wylde is a storm, not just a music player. Heavy metal in the United States for more than 30 years. When Zakk, now in his 50s, walks on stage, he doesn't have a bottle of Jack in his hand. Instead, he has clean eyes, a clean heart, and a guitar that used to belong to Darrell, the Dimebag. He used to live for the scream of a Marshall amp, but now every morning he talks to God in peace. Even though he's slower, he still wears leather and has a wild beard, feeling like they know what will happen if they go too far again. Not because of an incident or fame, Zakk Wylde didn't fall. He made the decision to stop, get up, and go forward. Due to this, he has become a unique person in the metal world. A wild spirit who knew when to stop, a fighter who never betrayed his brothers who had died, and a father, husband, and friend who didn't try to be any of those things. This isn't just a story about a rocker who made it through, but also about a person that was lost in the dark but is now walking in the light. This isn't to be praised, but to show that real strength doesn't come from playing a riff. It comes from being true to yourself. Childhood. Jeffrey Philip V. Lant was born on January 14, 1967, in Bayonne, New Jersey, an industrial town where most people didn't think one of the most famous musicians of the 1980s would grow up. His family was from Poland and didn't have much money. They weren't starving, but they also didn't have enough for Marshall amps or Black Sabbath passes. Zakk rarely talks about this in public, but everyone knows that his father, Jerome, grew up in a home. This is where his toughness and quiet personality come from. Zakk had a quiet loneliness as a child, the kind that comes with being crazy about music but having no one to share it with. He started playing guitar when he was 8 years old and then stopped. When he was 14, he came back and wouldn't let go. It seemed like the only thing left for Zakk to do was to practice guitar. Some days he played for 12 hours straight until his fingers hurt. He fell asleep in class while thinking about the sounds and strings vibrating. Zakk hid himself in the garage and played the same solo over and over until his hands got numb while the other kids played sports. No one made him, and it wasn't because he wanted to be famous. When he had the guitar with him, he felt like he had a reason to live. Schools weren't very important. Not only did Zakk have to do it, but it was there that he learned what it was like to act in front of a crowd, with his eyes full of nerves and defiance. Even though no one screamed during those shows, Zakk learned something very important. Make sure your guitar speaks clearly and loudly if you want to be heard. Zakk worked at a supermarket and played in a neighborhood band called Guitarist after graduating from Jackson Memorial High School in New Jersey. He started going by the stage name Zakk Wylde around this time. He made up the name short on his own. Strange, and the kind of thing you have to ask twice because no one can spell it. While Zakk's life wasn't full of big changes, each day taught him one important lesson. It would be his job to make a fire if there was no light outside. And from being a dead thing, the guitar slowly became what made Zakk Wylde who he was and what his future held. His parents did not teach him how to be an artist, but by playing the same thing over and over and becoming obsessed with each note, he learned how to live and never look back. Beginnings. Zakk Wylde wasn't well known in New Jersey in the 1980s. As a member of the small band Zakk, he played in local bars while carrying an old Gibson Les Paul over his shoulder and playing behind the lead singer. No praise or attention. While no one was looking, Zakk played with everything he had. He said, "I'd still play like I was opening for Black Sabbath at Madison Square Garden even if there were only 3 drunk guys there." There wasn't any pride, just a bad attitude. That turns an otherwise hopeless musical trip around. In 1987, Jake E. Lee quit Ozzy Osbourne's band, and a quiet search began for someone to take his place. Zakk's old guitar teacher told him to send Sharon Osbourne a practice tape. The tape only had some rough singing, a short solo, and a few riffs. No build-up and no polish. But it was enough to stop Ozzy immediately. Although Zakk's playing was rough, unrestrained, and exact, Ozzy couldn't ignore it. What happened at their first meeting felt like something out of a rock movie. When Zakk thought back, "I was shaking like a leaf. He told you to play. I had a hard time lifting my hand." But after just a few notes, Ozzy turned to Sharon and said, "He's the one." Within months, Zakk, the soft-spoken blonde kid fresh out of an unknown band, officially became Ozzy Osbourne's new guitarist stepping into the shoes once filled by legends like Randy Rhoads and Zakk Wylde. In 1988, they released their first album together, No Rest for the Wicked. What Zakk brought wasn't imitation, it was a completely original style. Razor-sharp riffs, blistering yet soulful solos, and above all, a profound respect for Ozzy's music. In less than 2 years, Zakk went from a nameless local guitarist to one of the most promising young faces in American metal. But what set him apart wasn't just technique, it was emotion. Every time he stood beside Ozzy, Zakk didn't just play, he bled, he lived it. He performed like he was delivering his own farewell. And from that point on, Zakk Wylde's career was no longer a lonely grind in a cold garage. It became part of a legend where a kid from New Jersey was entrusted with carrying the final scream of an icon. Career breakthrough. Zakk Wylde officially entered the ranks of heavy metal's great guitarists when he released No Rest for the Wicked 1988 with Ozzy Osbourne. At the time, no one knew this blonde-haired, ferocious guitarist would stay by the Prince of Darkness for so long. But it was Zakk, with his brutal playing, gritty tone, and a die-before-compromise spirit, who helped Ozzy transition through the difficult period following the death of Randy Rhoads and the departure of Zakk Wylde. The 1991 album No More Tears marked a major milestone in Zakk's career. It was the first time he took a deeper role in the songwriting process, and his guitar work was no longer just a replacement. It became the new soul of the band. The solo in the title track, No More Tears, was a guitar manifesto, fierce and haunting, like the cry of a soul torn between heaven and hell. And Mama, I'm Coming Home, the album's only ballad, proved that Zakk could also be tender, like a child longing for his mother. He co-wrote that song and helped Ozzy deliver one of the most emotionally resonant hits of his career. After Osmosis, 1995, Zakk was invited to join Guns N' Roses to replace Slash, but ultimately declined. He didn't want to leave Ozzy. That choice revealed something core about Zakk's character: loyalty to the man who believed in him, even if it meant passing on bigger fame. Still, Zakk knew, if he didn't build something of his own, he'd forever live in someone else's shadow. That's when Black Label Society, BLS, was born. In 1998, Zakk founded BLS, not to compete, but to create a world where he could fully be himself. The band embodied raw, wild, growling music, just like Zakk. Their debut album, Sonic Brew, wasn't a massive commercial hit, but it laid the foundation for a cult-like BLS culture embraced by metal fans worldwide through albums like Stronger Than Death, 2000, 1919 Eternal, 2002, Mafia, 2005, and Order of the Black, 2010. Zakk didn't just serve as guitarist and vocalist, he was the soul, the mapmaker, the conductor of an entire empire. The song In This River, written in memory of Dimebag Darrell, became an unspoken anthem of brotherhood and loss within the metal community. This is Zakk's unique gift. Despite his aggressive music, he never lacked emotional depth. In ballads like Spoke in the Wheel or Dead as Yesterday, you can feel the spirit of a man who's weathered storms, carrying wounds only music could heal. Zakk didn't stop at BLS. In 2014, he launched Zakk Sabbath, a band dedicated to reinterpreting Black Sabbath classics in his own style. This wasn't just a tribute act. It was Zakk's way of honoring his roots while bringing Sabbath sound closer to a new generation. Then in 2022, a jaw-dropping announcement shook the metal world. Zakk Wylde was chosen to step in for Dimebag Darrell in Pantera's reunion lineup, alongside Charlie Bonanti, Anthrax, Phil Anselmo, and Rex Brown. This wasn't a new Pantera, but a living tribute, where Zakk played Dime's actual guitar, with Dime's longtime tech Grady Champion on board to preserve the original sound. For Zakk, this wasn't a career high, it was a sacred duty. He never tried to be Dimebag. He just wanted to do right by his friend's legacy. Zakk Wylde doesn't have a #1 Billboard album. He doesn't flood the radio with hit singles. But he has a fiercely loyal following, from bikers, or veterans, and underground rockers to young loners who see themselves in BLS's gritty riffs. He didn't create a passing trend. He built an unbreakable fortress, a home for the lost. And in a world where everything is replaceable, Zakk Wylde remains exactly who he is. Not a substitute, not to be substituted, a warrior, a storyteller. With a guitar and a soul forever fused with metal in a way no one else can replicate. Personal life: when people think of Zakk Wylde with his wild beard, torn leather vests, sledgehammer-heavy guitars, and ferocious growl, few imagine that behind that fierce image lies a man of one true love. In the world of rock and roll, where marriages often shatter like guitars smashed on stage, Zakk Wylde is the rare exception. He married his high school sweetheart, Barbara Wylde, and has stayed by her side ever since. Zakk met Barbara in the 8th grade. In those early years when he was still playing in dusty rehearsal rooms across New Jersey, she was the one quietly behind the scenes, handling logistics, bringing water, counting the meager gig money, never once asking for credit. She didn't fall in love with a rock star. She fell for a kid with nothing but a guitar and a promise. "I'll try my best to the end." And Zakk kept that promise, not with fame, but with unwavering loyalty. They married in the late 1980s and have 4 children together: Haley Ray, Jesse John Michael, Hendrix Halen Michael Rhodes, and Sabbath Page. Their names alone reveal how deeply Zakk's love for music runs, each one a tribute to legends he reveres. Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, Tony Iommi, and Jimmy Page. But for Zakk, family isn't a shrine to idols. It's the only place he can come home and remove his battle armor. Barbara is more than just a wife. She's his manager, his road companion on every tour, and the first to notice when his health took a sharp decline in 2009. When Zakk suddenly developed blood clots in his lungs and legs, it was she who rushed him to the hospital. Doctors warned if he continued drinking, he could die. Zakk, who used to drink like breathing, who treated Jack Daniels as sole disinfectant, quit alcohol entirely after that scare. It was a decision far from easy, but absolutely necessary for music, for family, for himself. Since then, Zakk has adopted a healthier lifestyle, eating clean, lifting weights, meditating, and even reading the Bible every morning. He still plays metal, still dresses in black, still roars on stage. But backstage, you might find him sitting quietly, eyes closed in prayer, or calling his wife. No affair rumors, no quick rock star flings. Before Barbarian, Zakk briefly dated model Susie Owens, but completely cut ties afterward. In over 30 years, his name has never been attached to a family scandal. In an industry full of lost souls, Zakk chose to stand still and hold tight to the hand that's been with him from the beginning. "I'm a diehard New York Yankees fan," Zakk once joked, "but I'm even more loyal to my wife than to my team." Beneath the humor lies a rare life philosophy. A man can scream into a sea of strangers, but when he comes home, he still needs a place to quietly lay down his guitar and rest his head on the shoulder of the one he trusts most. For Zakk Wylde, that place has never changed. Legacy and influence. Zakk Wylde didn't leave his mark merely through growling riffs, screaming pinch harmonics that echoed like howls in the night, or his hulking frame slumped over a guitar after every show. He left behind something deeper, the image of a metal warrior who lived fully, not for fame, not for trends, but out of loyalty to music and the people within it. In the guitar world, Zakk Wylde is an unmistakable icon. He's not the most technically complex player, nor the most revolutionary innovator. But few can craft such a personal guitar tone, the kind that lets you recognize him with just a single note. The sound he created, wild yet profound, became a signature style that influenced generations across genres, from groove metal to doom, southern rock to modern heavy. Zakk is also one of the rare artists universally respected across the often divided metal community. Ozzy fans, Pantera fans, Black Sabbath loyalists, or BLS diehards, they may not all agree on everything, but they share one sentiment: a shrug, a nod, and a simple, "Zakk's the man," because he's never betrayed anyone. On a deeper level, it's Zakk's way of living that defines his legacy. In an industry flooded with exit strategies, shifting allegiances, and artists willing to sell everything for attention, Zakk stayed the course, even when it meant walking alone, quitting alcohol, or living in contrast to the world around him. He's proof that you can be a fiery artist and still a devoted husband, a gentle father, and a loyal friend who doesn't vanish when things get tough. And perhaps Zakk Wylde's greatest legacy doesn't lie in albums like No More Tears, Mafia, or Doom Crew Incorporated, but in his irreplaceable presence on stage, where he doesn't just play guitar, but sends out a message that metal is not just sound, it's loyalty, courage, and unshakable belief. What makes a true metal legend? For Zakk Wylde, the answer may be this. He never tried to become one. He simply stayed true to himself, and that was enough. Current life? Though now 58 years old, Zakk Wylde shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, 2024 and 2025 have seen him at perhaps his most energized and active state since turning 50, not just performing, but honoring the legacies he grew up with, fought alongside, and now continues to carry forward. The centerpiece of Zakk's current activities is the ongoing Pantera tour, a massive global tribute launched in 2022 to honor the band's late members, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul. In 2025, Zakk and Pantera continue to bring this tour to North America's biggest stages, from Philadelphia and Tampa to Santa Clara and Denver. With Dimebag's actual guitar in hand, Zakk isn't just playing music, he's resurrecting memories. Fans who once mourned Pantera's end now stand before the stage, shedding tears for a presence that feels different, but genuine, heartfelt, and worthy. At the same time, Zakk is also a key performer on the Experience Hendrix Tour 2025, a nationwide celebration of one of his childhood heroes, Jimi Hendrix. Spanning March to April 2025 across dozens of cities in the US and Canada, the tour features guitar legends like Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Eric Johnson, and Marcus King. But Zakk has been one of the most talked about acts, thanks to his distinct style that channels not just technique, but unfiltered rock and roll soul. Meanwhile, Zakk remains the frontman of Zakk Sabbath, his tribute band to Black Sabbath. In late 2024 and early 2025, they toured the US on the King of the Monsters circuit alongside tribute acts like Zoso and the Iron Maidens. In early 2025, Zakk Sabbath continued their journey across Europe from Manchester to Berlin, playing iconic covers like NIB, Iron Man, and War Pigs as a tribute to Tony Iommi, whom Zakk reverently calls the father of heavy metal. On top of that, released a digital album titled Greatest Riffs with Zakk Sabbath, a compilation of fan-favorite covers. The album has been warmly received not only by diehard fans, but also as a milestone marking over 30 years of Zakk keeping the Sabbath flame alive. Perhaps the most emotional moment of 2025 will be Zakk's participation in Black Sabbath's farewell concert, scheduled for July 5, 2025, at Villa Park in Birmingham. This historic show marks the full reunion of Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward after more than 2 decades. Zakk isn't an official member of Sabbath, but his invitation to perform at this farewell night proves how deeply woven he is into the band's spiritual legacy. When he's not touring, Zakk spends time at home in California with his wife, Barbara Ann, and their 4 children. He continues to avoid fleeting temptations and maintains a healthy lifestyle after quitting alcohol in 2009. Appearing on podcasts, talk shows, and behind-the-scenes videos, he always exudes warmth and humor, but also the discipline and intensity of a true musical warrior. Zakk Wylde has never announced retirement. Perhaps he never will, because even when the lights go out, he'll still be playing. For Ozzy, for Dimebag, for Sabbath, for metal fans around the world, and for himself, the man who never stopped living for music. So what about you? If you could witness a Zakk Wylde performance right now, what song would you choose to hear? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of blood, sweat, and music, like the one you've just watched. Thanks for being here, and see you in the next video. Rock on!